we are finally here. It took them a week longer than I expected, but Yuumi's complete story was finally released. And as I was reading her story, I started wondering, how did Riot come up with the idea of this champion? Whatever the case may be, Riot made sure to keep her potential wide. As you'll see, there is a lot of room to expand her character, and even to connect her to other champions. I know it's in her kit, it's not a pun. Sadly, we didn't get too much new info on the Yordles and the Bandle City in general. All we know is that Bandle City and the realm of Yordles is somewhere in its own place. It was never specified whether it is in the physical or the spirit realm. All that was revealed is that the portals themselves go through the spirit realm. But there is one thing we do know for sure. Yuumi's story does explain what's happening in these images. So, let's start with Yuumi's bio, and then let's have a look at her short story, The Biggest Catch. Yuumi's bio begins by setting up the environment. It all started in the outlands of Bandle City, in a hidden wooden valley, where moon moths and rainbow fish populated the area. This is also where Nora, the Yordle enchantress, lived with her cat, Yuumi. Because Yuumi was born in the realm of Yordles, of course she was touched by magic. Here the story says that she simply had powers of protection. But even though she was a special cat, for the most part her life wasn't so special. She spent most of her days pouncing at sunbeams and napping beneath mouse trees. But sometimes she joined Nora on her adventures, exploring both the material and the spirit realms. Nora spent her time collecting strange objects like broken cups, shards of colored glass, and fabric with funny stitching. And she studied each one of these supposed artifacts with care, though Yuumi never understood their purpose. While collecting these artifacts, Nora would sometimes get in trouble, and Yuumi would use her magic to protect Nora from harm, creating a bond between them. The thing is that Nora had her own special way to get into trouble. Normally, the doorways between realms are finicky and seldom open. Sometimes the stars have to align with particular stone archways, and other times Yordles have to wait for a silver blossom to bloom from the mud to open the pathway. But Nora used gateways of her own. She possessed the powerful Book of Thresholds, which allowed her to instantly travel between places showed in that book. The way it worked is that Nora and Yuumi would dive into the glowing pages, and they would arrive at their destination, and moments later the book would teleport itself after them. Yuumi never paid attention to the book, until the day she returned home from moon moth hunting, only to find Nora missing. Yuumi saw the book on her master's desk and flipped through its pages in panic, noticing that some pages were torn out entirely. Unable to read its title, Yuumi cried out to it in distress, calling it simply book. In response, the book wiggled, and Yuumi was surprised to learn that she could understand its thoughts. Despite not having a voice, book made itself loud and clear as it explained what happened. Nora had gone to a place so dangerous she had destroyed the portal as she traveled. This meant that book couldn't follow her. At that moment, Yuumi knew she had to rescue Nora, with the help of book. The problem was that each of its 1,000 pages led to a different location, and the page Nora had used to travel was lost. So the only option was to get transported somewhere near, which meant that Yuumi and Book would have to explore every possible threshold. In the end, Yuumi became Book's unlikely keeper, vowing to protect it with the courage of a lion if it fell into the wrong hands, since the doorways to Bandle City could open to all kinds of intruders. And so, Yuumi and Book started visiting dangerous and unfamiliar lands. Yuumi tried to sniff Nora's scent on the wind, but she never found a trace. While Yuumi would sometimes take a break from their search to follow the scent of a mouse, or renew her strength with a quick nap, Book was frustrated, grumpy over lost time, and nervous about threats they might encounter. Nevertheless, Yuumi and Book were both determined to find their master and bring her home. When Yuumi especially missed Nora, she often sought out other companions. One of her favorites was a door-carrying shepherd, with thick whiskers and a deep laugh like a babbling brook. Yuumi rested on his shoulder for a time, protecting him from angry snow spirits storing up flurries in a hailstorm, while he brought her wriggling fish. Eventually, Yuumi uncovered the scent of her master lingering in a vast Shuriman ruin. Digging deep into the sand, she unearthed a broken shard of a blue pottery that looked like a piece from one of Nora's teapots. Before she could burrow further, a ferocious beast surfaced from the sand, and Yuumi and Book barely escaped. She could only imagine the chaos if a creature like that ripped its claws into Book's pages. That was Yuumi's bio. The ending here seems to be very important. Nora ended up in a Shuriman ruin, which is also where the story of Varus ended. Please don't start any Nora is Darkin theories. But remember these moments, because there is a tiny chance that these might be the very first teasers for the female character Varus was looking for. It is also interesting when you realize that at the end of Yuumi's teaser, she jumped into Icathia. Originally I thought that this could be a hint that is where Nora went, but that can't be the case. Remember, Nora destroyed the portal as she traveled there. So all the places where Yuumi can travel is not the place where Nora is. So if she is in Shurima, at the very least we know she is not in Icathia. And now let's have a look at Yuumi's short story. A story that shows us a day of adventuring of Yuumi and Book. The story begins in Nora's house. Yuumi was leaping into the air and catching moon moths. Nora herself was asleep, snoring loudly. As Yuumi caught more and more moths, they all slowly started morphing into mackerels. And soon enough there were hundreds of floating fish in the air. But all of a sudden the entire room turned upside down. Book fell from its shelf, and Yuumi followed it as she started dropping onto the ceiling. Nora slowly floated upward, still asleep, and all the fish flew in every direction. But then, in a Spanish telenovela style, it was all revealed to be a dream. Yuumi woke up in a wooden crate, blinking her sleep away as moonlight shone through the gaps in the box. Then, as a familiar smell filled her nose, Yuumi remembered how she got here. She was in Bilgewater, in a crate full of dried fish. She tried to get comfy again, but then she got knocked onto her side as someone moved the box, and dozens of dried fish fell on her. To Yuumi it was like a dream. But all this time, Book was fluttering in the corner. It always hinted that food was bad for its pages. When Yuumi peeked out through the gaps, she noticed the moonlight was reflecting the ocean, which naturally led to panic. Neither Yuumi nor Book liked water, and this was a perfect time to get out of here. Out of shock, Yuumi started desperately scratching the wood, but she regained her senses when she noticed she was also accidentally tearing all the fish to pieces. Then she opened Book's cover with her paw, revealing a frosted page. They had to escape somewhere, anywhere, even somewhere cold. Yuumi was about to jump into that icy portal when she heard a high-pitched magical scream, a yordle scream. Yuumi peeked through the gaps again, and she saw two human sailors dragging a blue-furred yordle to the edge of the ship. They were surrounded by harpoons, fishing poles, spears, and coils of thick wire. They must have been deep-sea monster hunters. From their conversation, it was obvious that they wanted to use the yordle as a bait. If you think about it, this is an awesome reference to Fizz's story. A story where a race of ancient yordles was wiped out by gigalodons, which were massive dragon sharks that probably just enjoyed the taste of yordle meat. In any case, the blue yordle wasn't too happy about being used as a bait, and he begged them to be released. But then the ship began to tilt as something bumped it from below. And when an enormous fin started circling the boat, it was obvious the thing they were trying to hunt arrived. At this point, Book was tugging at Yuumi. It wanted to escape through a portal and get away from all the water. But the yordle's cries wouldn't allow Yuumi to simply leave, not after she lost Nora. So she stuck her paw through the slats in the crate, and she opened the crate's latch. Yuumi successfully snuck pretty close to the two monster hunters, who were now holding the yordle dangling above the ocean on a fishing pole. Book nervously followed her. But then they got noticed. At first, the two pirates were confused. They didn't know what Yuumi even was. One of them thought it was a purple raccoon with a flying book. The other thought it was a baby bear with a journal. A third pirate noticed she was just a cat, and they ran towards her to catch her. Thankfully, Yuumi was agile, and it was easy for her to dart between their legs. Then she leapt at the yordle who was still dangling above the ocean. For a moment, Yuumi questioned her decisions, but once she was in the air, there was no going back. She landed on the yordle's shoulder, but before she could do anything, the biggest fish she had ever seen erupted from below them. Yuumi's shiny light illuminated its razor-sharp pointy scales. It was a third the size of the boat. It opened its jaw packed with hundreds of teeth, and then closed it around Yuumi, Book, the yordle, and even a bit of the fishing pole. It was pitch black now. But before the gulpfish could swallow them further, Yuumi surrounded everyone in a magical bubble, big enough to get stuck in its gullet. When Yuumi blinked her shiny light again, she revealed massive rotten teeth, large enough to make the yordle squeal. Yuumi tried to open Book again with her paw, but the gulper fish leapt into the air and tossed everyone around inside the bubble. When it all finally stopped, they heard the sailors shouting outside. The fish probably landed on the ship's deck. Finally, Yuumi had some time to flip through Book's pages. She found a portal that shimmered with the dusk green of Bandle City, their home. So she grabbed the yordle's shirt with her teeth and she dove into the page. A few moments later, after a dizzying trip through the spirit realm, they emerged coughing, taking in the sweet air of Bandle City. Book flapped its pages to dry off. The blue yordle stood up, confused. To his knowledge, the closest portal in Bilgewater was on the docks, but Yuumi explained that Book carried their portals wherever they went. The Yordle didn't want to question them. They did save his life after all. After this, they split their ways. The Yordle knew how to get home from here and he began his journey back, but Yuumi and Book stayed a while longer. The calm, sweet-scented air of Bandle City reminded them of Nora, but when they realized that maybe Nora might be waiting for them to rescue her at this very minute, Yuumi opened Book to a new page and she dove in. That was the complete story of Yuumi and Book. As I said, it seems that Nora is on an important mission, so Riot can easily tie Yuumi to a bigger event. I actually wonder if Riot has a long-term plan for her storyline, or if they intentionally left her open, so that she can be the one to connect multiple stories when needed. Either way, next up we have the story of Tristana and Lulu. But don't think it will be just another happy comedy-packed story, because their story may also contain some brutal familiar faces. I know that during the early stages some champions may have some buggy animations, but I didn't see that coming. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.